Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Serene View. So I'm Serene, your host for this series, and today I have with me Jennekin Dicks, and we are going to talk about systemic resilience. Now, by now, you are probably sick and tired of the word resilience. Like you're like, resilience again. No, but this is a good resilience, right? Because if you are a business leader, now tell me if this feels familiar, which is you have too many balls in the air and you are petrified of dropping even one of them, right? There's way too many things on your plate, especially as we learn more Greek letters, more things get put on our plates. But you don't know if you drop them, as you inevitably will, what's going to happen. Can the system pick it up? Will your people rally together and save you? So today, Jennekin is here to tell us about something called systemic resilience, which really is the concept that the system can take care of the balls that we drop. And she will show us some of the ways in which we can achieve this Nevada of leadership. So before I start, Jennekin is the owner of Management in Action. She calls herself a context developer, and for the last 10 years, she's been helping companies really just to connect all the dots, people, processes, strategy, so on and so forth, systems, just to get it together and make it work so that the whole business ecosystem functions. So, Jennekin, tell us a little bit more. I mean, what is a context developer?
Hey, Serene, it's so nice to be here. Look, I've always struggled to land on a
Sorry,
title.
Jennifer, I did interrupt you for a short while. You're a little bit on the soft side. Your sound was okay just now, but now you're a little bit on the soft side. So whether you could just speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'll just lean in. Is this better?
Yes, a little better. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
I
much.
don't
Go
know what
on.
happened here, but I will check quickly and see what my audio is running on. It should be running. Yep, it's on what it should be.
Yes. It's okay now. Yeah, it's clear now. Yes.
There you go. That should be better. How's that?
Yes, much better. Yes. Okay, all right. Yes, go.
It has jumped onto another microphone. That's fine. Yeah, so look, I've always struggled to land on a title for myself, and context developer sits well with me because I'm kind of across, I guess, where many different parts converge. So it's systems, processes, people, culture, vision, and strategy, and so on. But I mean, if you look at the basic output of my work, just at face value, it's helping businesses internally with their systems and processes. But because you can't just bring a solution into a business, in its own right without considering context, because it will land in a certain way and people will react to it in a certain way depending on their context. So, what they know, what the culture is like, what actually sets up that culture, things like roles and leadership and how deep your levels of leadership goes into the layers of roles, the physical environment, the technology they use, how they use it. So there's all these different parts of a context that changes a solution as you bring it into it. So I don't believe in just bringing in a solution. I like understanding context and then working with people so we can figure out together what will work for them. So context developer. So crosses a few boundaries within that. Oh, I can't hear you, Serene. You're on mute.
Yes.
That was going to happen.
Every single live, every single meeting, I must be on mute once, right? No, I think it sounds fascinating to have all these different disparate parts get together. But I think the pain really now of leaders is more that we are stuck in a position where we have so much on our plate and more keeps coming in. And every single part seems equally important, right? We are trying to keep all these, 20, 30 balls up in the air. And not only at work, I mean, many of us are also dealing with our own children, our, work, our life at home as well. And we are wondering, right? Like, how do we even keep these balls? Right? I mean, what is the situation and why is it like that? Right? So have you seen this? And because I've seen leaders really burnt out just simply because they are struggling to keep all the things running, keep everything going.
Yeah, and I mean another visual around that is almost like people are running and they're kind of leaning, they're falling forward. They always feel like they at the point of actually just losing their balance because they've got to run so hard and do so much. And it's tricky because there's this feeling that, if you drop a ball, if something doesn't work out, it's going to have this knock-on effect on your own career, and people are going to blame you, or things are just not going to work out, and it's all going to get worse and worse and worse. And so people just keep on. I feel that a lot of people are feeling that they just keeping it together, and just having to try harder and harder and harder, and then you get to situations of burnout, where people have tried so hard. And they just get to that point of burnout and said, I just can't do this anymore. And unfortunately, then, there's often situations where people burn out and they kind of feel, well, I have failed. I haven't been able to do this. And obviously that makes it even worse, right? When people experience that level of, I couldn't do it, I should have been better, which doesn't help, does it?
No, it doesn't help at all. But I hate to say this, right? I mean, leaders are supposed to be doing more things. That's why we get paid more, right? They are supposed to be doing more things. Are you saying that leaders shouldn't be doing this many things?
I'm saying that, this reliance on the excellence of the individual is part of the problem. And, we're sitting in larger systems and larger ways of thinking that has taught us that if we narrow focus on ourselves and our goals, and we just keep running hard at that, and we're just trying to focus and not get distracted and do really well in that lane, that rewards will come our way. And it's true, it can and it will, but those rewards come with sacrifice. And I like thinking of it as when you narrow focus so much on these goals that has rewards on that path of the goals, you're actually being distracted from a lot that sits around you that could have made your path easier, that could have supported you. But there's this idea that, it's the person must excel. And if the person doesn't excel, they're not trying hard enough, and then someone else will take over and they'll do it better. So that's I think that's the framework that people experience quite often, which makes it very hard, because it always just comes back to, well, if something falls apart, someone is to blame.
Well, Daniel has dropped it to say leaders are not super employees. They need to be part of the team. Unfortunately, exactly. Daniel, and I will say this from a history of 20 years of HR in my background, that many leaders are called on to be almost superhuman, to be superheroes, to know what to do, to know where to go, to solve the problems that their employees can't. Yeah. And that is the expectation of leaders nowadays. That's how it is. And especially in the last 2 years, right, with COVID, what happens when the situation changes? They go to the leader and go, so boss, what do we do now, right?
Yeah. It is a position of responsibility. It can't just be a position of performance. It's a position of responsibility, and that opens up a hell of a lot of conversations, doesn't it? Just in what they see, what they decide on, what information comes their way. There's all these things that should be happening around them that can support them in their responsibility, and they can take responsibility then. But it's not just the performance of the individual. It just doesn't. I just don't think it's a sustainable way to, or even a fun way to work.
Well, Wayne has said exactly that, right? He's like, okay, his solution is just not to play ball, just to play dodgeball, right? The number of leaders that have gone, hang on, we need yet another committee meeting to tell you what to do about COVID, hang on. And I think I've spoken to leaders over the last 2 years, coaching them, where they've talked about this, right? Like paralysis by analysis, which is a whole bunch of the middle managers get together, sometimes even top leaders get together, and they have endless meetings without coming to any conclusion. And they are unable to make a decision. And this is exactly what Wayne is saying, right? They are playing dodgeball. Yeah. And why is it that there is this issue right now?
Yeah, and there's another way to look at that is they're not dodging the ball, they're redirecting it. They're delegating. So you say, well, no, I can't handle this, that person has to handle it. And we'll get to more on this a bit later, I think, when we kind of explore the alternative. But this idea that, you just direct the ball the other way, and it doesn't need your understanding or interest or support behind it anymore, that's very damaging. That's saying that's someone else's problem. And quite often it's things where a leader really needs to have an awareness of what's happening there, because there may be a decision that needs to be made in the process that they can see, that from their point of responsibility and insight, that they need to make a decision there. So it's this idea that, we just handle in our lane what we can, and what we can't handle in our lane, we put in someone else's lane. No, that's problematic because
yes.
it separates the conversation, and it literally breaks apart what
Yes.
should have been a resilient network of decision making and information flows in a business. It literally just breaks it apart. And then it leaves people going, well, if it wasn't important enough for that person who's in that position, and I want to make my way to that level in the company, why would I give it attention?
Yes, but I think
that's not what I should be focusing on. It's not important enough.
Wait, hang on. I'm going to tell you this. So sorry, Richard. I'm going to get your comment off, and I'll take this from Daniel, which is exactly what you've said, right? He's like, this is, they are trying to give an impression that action is taking place. Yes, we are doing something. We are having a meeting.
Yeah.
But a decision needs to be made, and they are not willing to make it. And I think this is what exactly what Richard has said, right? Which is, the leader as a superhero is just one type of leadership. There is the leader as the ecosystem enabler, and there's the leader as Richard, I'll push further and say there's the leader as the ecosystem role model, right? Which is what Jennekin said, right? If I, as the leader, can push the thing around on the table by just having more meetings, what does that communicate to the rest of the organization, right? I mean, what is that saying to the ecosystem in terms of what is expected behavior, what is good behavior if you want to get up to this level?
Yeah. Well, let's use that example of what Daniel said about meetings, and I'll connect it as well with Richard, what he's saying about ecosystem enablers. I love that term, by the way. So imagine meetings feel a little bit pointless, or you kind of go like, well, these aren't really well run, and we're not really getting to any good decision-making conclusions. What often happens is that because we're so focused on the excellence of people rather than system, people say, well, these are the people running the meetings. I'm going to tell them to be better at running meetings. Or we're going to send them on a training course so they are better communicators and they're better able to run their meetings, right? So now we've just
I'm laughing.
Put a little bit of a gloss over that ball and say, there you go, that's yours.
I'm laughing because that's what Richard has said. He says our action bias has become pathological, right? I mean, go and then learn how to be better at meetings.
That's right.
Go and then do more meetings.
Yeah. So here's a bit of a different take on it if you want to think in terms of a healthier ecosystem and what leaders can enable within that. Something like a topic of meetings. What if you were to look at look at your meeting infrastructure and say, okay, well, and I said it's very basic. So what are the meetings that we're having and which ones do we need to have? That's a good starting point, right? But then you might also say, well, who's in the meetings? How are they? Do we have decision makers in there? And then what information is flowing into that meetings? What actually do we have, say, in our software platforms? Is the reporting in that even accessible to those people? And if it is accessible, what does it look like visually? Does it actually tell them something really useful that they can visually assess quickly in the moment? So there's all these kind of systemic topics that start dropping into the conversation, right?
So
then you say, well, okay, what happens after the meeting? Where's the decision going to go? What sits around it? And so
we are moving on to the next level, right? Because this is back to the leaders bit, right? I mean, here's Daniel saying that, I agree, Richard. A leader should be multifaceted. They play multiple roles. The roles depend on the situation.
Yeah.
The problem we started with, and actually this is something I think most leaders will agree with us now, is we have too many things to do. There's just too much on the leader's plate, and we are dropping the balls. And when we drop the balls, everything goes to pot. I'm trying to think of a non-swear word to use at the moment. Everything falls apart. Things fall apart. We get yet another crisis, which means yet another thing on our plate. And so therefore we are on this treadmill where we burn ourselves out and we kill ourselves rather than risk losing that ball. So I think, Jennekin, you are talking about, a brave new world, right? A different reality where the system can deal with the drop balls. Tell us more about it. Tell us.
Well, it starts with a very different way of seeing a group of people, and so there's been this reliance, like I said before, on the excellence of people, and we've literally developed our reward systems and how people, focus on goals to achieve those rewards. We've literally focused on it as, it's all about the individual excellence, and then it's kind of this what's the word I can't remember the word now, but it's this idea that a scarcity thinking. There you go. So it's scarcity thinking. There's only a few will do well, and so we've got to run hard for that. And our hierarchy of what is celebrated in businesses kind of feed into that as well. It's saying, well, this is important. These are important decisions to be made, and so focus on that, and you will, things will work out well for you. So we don't give attention to what sits around it. And what happens then is that you've got individuals doing this, and they're constantly getting this message of what's important and what's not. And I'm glad Richard's on here, because it's one of my favorite things that he
totally agrees, right? Yeah. But
people think strategy is hard and operations is easy. That's not true. They can both be very hard.
I was going to say that I agree with you, right? Like two things about the whole structure of organizations these days, right? First, the CEO gets paid something like 200-300 times what a frontliner gets paid. CEO salaries have gone up tremendously. I can't remember what it was, 200% in the last 10 years, whereas frontliner salary has gone up by less than 50%. Right? So all these are showing showing us signs of this, one hero leader. Exactly what you said. The system rewards the individual. The system only rewards certain very narrow behaviors. So how can the system look like? Paint the picture for us. What could happen in this system?
Yeah, so the alternative then is where you start saying, look, it's not just about the individual and the path that the individual's running, and how much the individual gains from that. It's far more about the network result. And therefore, the ecosystem is a word we like using. It's this idea that there's an interconnectivity across a whole organization. And so it's that strength and collaboration and what that can achieve. Now, that does take a shift. There's been a lot of conversation around purpose in business. But, the real value of purpose in business is that it is not just that it draws people together on looking at one thing. It's that it draws people to look together at something beyond themselves. And so they're looking out. So, and when you look out for an organization, you are looking at what's in the organization and beyond. So both those things matter. So it's this idea that we believe that if we believe we can do more and better things together, we will look more carefully at how we do it together. And that's why I was saying.
That's it. I guess it all sounds great, right? Because I've heard collaboration. We must all work together. We are on big team, purpose, and so on and so forth. My question is, does it actually work in real life, right? Richard is saying there's a gap between expectations and reality. I agree, Richard. You and me, right? We're all cynics. Like, leadership strategy is way more fragmented. It's way more emergent. And I think we feel it more now than ever before, because let's put it this way, right? Right now, I don't know what's the next letter after Omicron that I will have to learn, right, of the Greek alphabet. And what's then going to be the impact of that? Has the economic fallout hit yet concerning COVID? So all of these are unknowns, and they emerge from moment to moment. And therefore, give me a real example. Have you actually seen this in practice?
Yeah. So yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it and be excited about it. It's the potential of people. It's extraordinary, I always think. And when things shift in their thinking and they start clicking together and they start actually looking at how they do things, they create this ability amongst themselves to look ahead further. But at the same time, there's this idea that they've got one another's back. So, and I'll give a practical example in a second, but it's this idea that things are going to go wrong. You can't avoid mistakes showing up. Things are sometimes very complex, and some of the clients I work with are professional service kind of very complex work that they do, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of variables in the projects that they do. And so things that the ball will be dropped at some point. But it's that idea that someone else, the system itself actually provides some ability or a good level of ability to look ahead or to kind of spark the right conversation, so people talk about it, and they see these things, and they can understand how they help one another. So a very simple example, what we did at one of my clients was that they had this, they've been running their business for 20 years, well-experienced people, really great bunch of people, good knowledge in the business, good clients, good everything, but errors were showing up in their work and gaps were opening up. And it was a process of the directors in the business wanted to make sure that their people took responsibility and stepped up. In other words, they step up to the mark, step up to the plate, bring what you can bring and do the right thing and don't make mistakes. But when we looked at the problem and the processes that they used to try and get people basically to be accountable and take responsibility, there was very little support for those team leaders. There's very little opportunity for real support in the system for them to help them. Some of them were not that experienced. So where does the support come from? So we did a really simple thing. We set up and this is so simple. This is ridiculously simple, but it worked so well. We set up what I just call a project support plan. So it's literally a spreadsheet that just shows all the phases of their projects, and it links to good information that they had available that helps people to understand what's required of them and what are the simple things like checklists and things where a lot of knowledge had been built into, but people weren't really accessing it. So it literally put it on a timeline for people on their projects. But that in itself, I've used that in many different places, but that in itself doesn't solve the problem. What really solved the problem was that this conversation in developing this was with the leaders in the business. And they suddenly understood their role in it. And so what we set up was visually so accessible to them that they could, their people actually would use this format on their projects. And once a week, the directors would get together and they'd literally just pull up all the current projects and these sheets for every single project. And they'd quickly look at it and they'd quickly get an idea of what's going on in the project. It visually spoke to them. And then the people were, the people knew that the directors were going to look at it. And so therefore, they actually completed the forms. And it took them seconds. It wasn't something that was laborious. It just took them seconds. And what happened then was because people knew that their leaders were going to look at it, the leaders looked at it and then they followed up. And then, every week or every fortnight, they'd get their people together and they'd talk about the things that they understood in the process that was now very visual to them. And then they offered support and help. And because they were more experienced, they'd say to their team leaders, they'd say, look, this is coming up. I reckon you're going to have to watch out for that. And suddenly there was an interconnectivity between people and a support. And what happened with them was that I spoke to them about a year after they'd started implementing it, and I got back to them and said, how did it go? Because they kind of went off and they sorted themselves out because they really understood what they needed to do. And they came back and he said, I can't believe how errors have reduced across their projects. And this is my favorite bit, the young people and the new people, because there's staff turnovers happening everywhere, and especially in this industry, people are moving. New people would come in, and young people would say as well. So that is understood. They understood what was expected of them. They understood the support that was available to them, and where their own knowledge was lacking in being able to see ahead. This process helped them to see ahead. And the support showed up from their leaders and then amongst one another as well. So it was a very visual example of not just saying, well, the team leaders need to step up. They should ask better questions, or they should, people need to be accountable. It was literally looking at what's available to people and how do they connect in conversation. So that's an example of resilience built in a system where it then starts to help people see ahead and offer more information. But you can't do that without the excellence of people, right? You still need, it doesn't replace the excellence of people, but it takes away some of the pressure and it starts preventing mistakes and rework, which gives more space for the excellence of people. So people don't feel so constantly lost in, 100 balls falling in their hands. So.
Yes. Richard says the future of work is not in people or places, in projects. And I disagree with you, Richard. I think the future of work is in people. And I was just going to add to what Jennekin has said. Jennekin is a system expert. I'm not an expert in systems. I'm more an expert in people. But what I wanted to say is this, that when I look at a team and when I look at people, I often see so much wastage, so much inefficiencies and wastage that it is shocking. Right? A lot of the times people I mean, people get hired for jobs on job descriptions that were written 10 years ago, and the job has actually evolved. Let me see. Daniel says the leader has to keep enforcing the workplace culture and systems. You are right. You're totally right. And I
Yeah.
think if you want to talk about culture, I will talk to you. You talk about systems, you can talk to Jennekin. And what I mean by this inefficiencies is oftentimes people are stuck doing work that they are not good at, they are not trained for, and they are simply incompetent at. So there is an innate. So, for example, I'm very extroverted, and if you ask me to do a lot of deep work by myself, alone, away from everything, I can be blunt and tell you I won't be very good at it. There
Yeah.
will be introverted people who are way better at that work than I will ever be.
Yeah.
But what happens when every time I walk into a team is I will look at what they're doing and I'll look at who they are and I'll go like, why is B assigned to do this instead of A? Because A would be so much better. She would enjoy the work. Therefore, she would then be more efficient and more productive and more importantly, happier.
Yeah.
And actually, some of these things can be reshuffled if you work on the same team and look at it. And that's also what we talk about resilience, right? Like if I'm going to drop a ball, like, let's put it simple. If I weren't able to turn up to be the host of this show because I was sick, I'm down, I had a stomach flu, let's say, who among my team would be best to step up for that? Who
Yeah.
among my team would naturally be able to step into that role without fear? Who would be able to do it with very little prep? Some people are better doing it on the fly. Some people need a week to prepare. Knowing that and being able to build that into the system is very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
And like so that's more your job than mine. But really, literally going like, okay, in this situation, A, you are the choice, right? In this situation, B, you are the choice, and almost expecting it to fail. Look, I will not have perfect health, every week for the foreseeable future, right? There will be times when I go down. There will be times when I drop balls, and knowing that you will planning for who's going to pick up those balls, how you're going to do it. Then we
Yeah.
talk about culture, right? The the influence of culture really is what is the norm? Is it the norm to step in? And if you step in, are you appreciated or rewarded? Something that Jennekin talked about, right? Or I'm only rewarded for doing my job, right? So if I help you with your job, there's extra work I'm doing that I'm not getting rewarded in any way for, right? Not even a thank you note, right?
Yeah.
So am I rewarded for stepping up? And if I step up, I mean, look, I drop a ball, Jenny, can you step up and pick up for me? You may not do it as well as I do, right? What happens then? Do you
Yeah.
get punished? Do you get, in some way criticized for that?
Yeah.
All that builds into the culture, and all that becomes, will people step up? This is the number one complaint, right? Lots of leaders come and tell me, my people don't take initiative. They don't step up to it. Like what you said, they don't step up to the plate. And why? And I
Yeah.
would say honestly, my first question usually is, what do you do if they step up and they fail? What is
Yeah.
your first reaction?
Yeah. I mean, there's in a resilient system, there's there's because there's good connectivity and flow in a resilient system, and what people look at and what people talk about is not narrow focus. It's actually looking across, the how of the whole system. There's a far deeper understanding, like their understanding of people. So people are understood and seen for across a broader spectrum of what's valuable, right? So people, all people fit in that spectrum of what's rewarded and what's valuable. If they're a good fit for that business, if they contribute to what that business is trying to achieve, whatever their little or large or small part of that is, it's something that is valued. And so it means that it's a really good example of that actually is safety systems in businesses. So owners and businesses, they carry a significant duty under workplace health and safety legislation that they have to make sure that people are safe, but they don't have the actual time to manage safety systems, right? So they delegate it. But what if they so there's a benefit for them and that being done well. But quite often it's quite rare for me to see business leaders really respecting that work that people do in detailing and managing safety systems in a business. And so those people who do the work, they kind of feel, well, it's not really considered valuable, or the only valuable part in it is actually the fact that someone else has to worry less about their liability because they're the owner of the business. So it's not it's not something that people feel necessarily rewarded in by being recognized for what they do, and so it becomes a limiting factor in the business and how much attention people will give to it. So the systems become very weak around it quite often. It's not given attention. People are always too busy to put their time and attention into it, and so it starts to fall apart a little bit. It's a weak system element, and then when a mistake shows up, and you can really consider, if we talk about mistakes, it's not just safety systems, anywhere in a system where a mistake shows up, how willing are people to actually go, well, how do we stop this from happening again? Or is it easier to just say, well, it wasn't my fault, or just kind of start pointing at who dropped the ball and where does the blame sit? Because it doesn't feel valuable to give attention to system around them when it's a narrow focused environment. It kind of feels like people feel like they're giving into a void, and if they keep giving into it, I've often seen people who are technically very interested in certain parts of their work, and they keep giving into it, but it's never really valued or recognized, and it's not supported. And so they actually feel depleted after a while, and they end up leaving, or they just kind of shrink back into their role, and it's disconnected from the larger systems around that. So that's a deeply problematic outcome, because it means that risks grow, and the things that you could have prevented, the bad things that happen in the mistakes that come out that you could, or mistakes that repeat, that you could have stop the dead by actually resolving the issue. You don't, because why would you bother? It's not your problem.
Because it's exactly what Wayne has said, right? I mean, the solution is to plan to fail. Is to plan to go like, what happens when the ball drops? What is the next level? What is the next layer of ball catchers that can be activated, and how to get the ball droppers rehabilitated to come back. But the issue is right now that the ball catchers, the next layer of ball catchers, are not rewarded. They are not rewarded for picking up these balls that are dropped by the leaders. I, as the leader, I'm expected to keep it going. I get rewarded, but if I drop the ball and somebody else picks it up, he or she doesn't get rewarded. And even worse, if he or she picks it up and fails, then they get punished. And this is exactly what Jennekin is saying, right? I mean, it's not my problem then, right? Why would I be so nosy as to pick up something that would actually maybe cause me more harm than good, right? Like, I won't be rewarded for it, and I might actually be punished for it. Why would I be so nosy to stick my nose into that?
And it is not always a case of being punished for it. It's about not being recognized. It's about pouring effort into something, knowing, this is the most frustrating thing for people, isn't it? Like you see a problem and you pour all this effort into it, and you're giving a part of yourself there, and you're going above and beyond your normal role or whatever it might be, and you're saying, I'm going to solve this problem. And you come up with a solution and then nothing happens. Or people say, oh, that's a great solution. We should do that. We should totally do that. And then none of the other parts that need to come into play to support it and to give it life, and none of it happens, and it falls flat. And it's deeply troubling to people when that happens. It's very frustrating. It's a slap in the face. And none of that, I don't believe any of that happens. That slap in the face is not deliberate. It's just the way that people think in systems.
I love the way that Wayne is
the value that's given to it. Yeah,
I love the way that Wayne is putting it, right? When a ball becomes a bomb, no one wants to touch it. No one wants to go near. And I think that's exactly your point, right? I mean, it becomes like a hot potato, a bomb, and I can pour everything into it, and so what? Nobody appreciates this, right? This is it's like a void, like you said.
It's soul destroying. I mean, a big part of my work over the years has been to build, help people build certifiable management systems. So literally quality, safety, environmental management systems. I've done a lot of work in helping companies design those or refine them and implement them. And it's kind of like, you have to consider the reason people have for wanting certain things to happen in their business and what that communicates to everyone that's involved in it. So something like a third-party certifiable quality system or safety environmental system, quite often at the top end of leadership, the value that people see in that is that they're going to have a certificate that says that they're third-party certified, and they're going to get government work with it. Now that's very relevant here in Australia because I don't know what it's like where you are, Serene, but it's very relevant, very necessary quite often for the larger government projects.
Relevant here too, yes.
Yeah,
I think in Europe and US as well, so yes.
Yeah, but then people pick up very quickly that the language around this and the evidence and system around them and what's actually being given real attention by their leaders is that it's got nothing to do with the actual health of the system. It's just purely let's get the certificate and move on, and it's incredibly damaging. I've actually got a little story that's got nothing to do with business, but it relates really well to that.
Can I interrupt you and make a joke of it? They say certificates here are called, backside covering paper, right? So basically, what it does is it covers you.
Yeah, but I'll say quickly because I've brought this up. For anyone who works with certified systems, it's really I went through a process of. It's just. Really boring. It put you to sleep to read those international standards, but they're actually incredibly clever in the structures that they put up and what they make possible in the infrastructure of business. They've really covered all bases. The way it's written is very hard to pick that from it, but I've looked at it very deeply for many years, and there's a really clever infrastructure in those standards that people get certified to. And then quite often I meet people who see this as well, and they can see how the infrastructure would genuinely support a better resilient system in the business if people actually do it in a way that's valuable.
So actually, what's the problem, Jennekin, is that people are not truly implementing it. Like they're going through the motion without implementing the spirit of it. Is that what's happening?
Well, it's because people don't connect it with the value. So I was going to say I've got this little story. It's got nothing to do with business. There was this, and it's a real thing that happened. I'm pretty sure it was here in Australia years ago. I kind of want to set up the scene a little bit. Imagine you're on a train platform, and a train has just arrived, and suddenly there's loads of people around, but the train is sitting there for a while. And suddenly one person starts running around. The guy starts running around and says to you, everyone, come on, let's rock the train. Let's all push against the side of the train and let's rock it. You wouldn't do it, would you? Because, why? What's the point of that? Why would you step out of your own comfort zone and go and do something like that? You'd be absolutely resistant. This person's mad. Why are they even asking me that? But true story, there was a situation where a person had stepped, and the train had arrived at the platform. A guy had stepped off and he slipped, and his leg got stuck between the platform and the train, and he could not, it was right down to his thigh. He could not pull it out, right? And so someone got the bright idea saying to everyone, let's push it, let's rock the train. And as we push the train and rock the train, we can pull this guy out. And that's exactly what happened. It was all caught on, you can go Google it. It was all caught on.
I've seen the video. Yes.
Cameras. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, everyone came and they helped. And suddenly that simple action that before carried zero value now suddenly carried value because people could see the point of it. It had a good outcome that they wanted to be part of that, and so everyone helped, and there's a result. And I can guarantee that every person who walked away from that who helped, they've got a lifelong happy feeling about that. They contributed to something, and all they did was just a bit of work, right? But it seemed, if without that purpose, it was pointless. And so that's often very true in how people treat the work in systems and doing the bits and pieces that's needed. Generally, in any business, you're going to have people who are capable and interested in all the various components that sits across a whole management system. You can go from the admin parts to the people parts, the compliance parts, all the different parts, and so there's people are quite often have interests and they're capable. But because, like we were saying before, because that work is not valued in the same way as certain, narrow bits of work. People just don't feel motivated to be a part of it, for one. And two, if they're a part of it, they don't get the sense of a strength growing in the system. There's no momentum behind that. It's just, bits of work that are disconnected, and no one's connecting the parts very well, which is actually not that hard to do once people are motivated to actually connect across the system. But if people aren't motivated to do that, then it's a weak system.
I would say this from being with HR for such a long time, that is beyond I think it's beyond just motivation, right? A lot of the really motivated, really good leaders, or even below that, just burn out. They just die, literally. But what happens is it's being creating a system that supports this collaboration, creating a culture where this is valued. And as Daniel has said, right, what is valuable is situational, contextual, and therefore the leader is there to connect the dots. The leader is not there to make all the dots work, but the leader is there to connect the dots. The leader is there to make that collaboration work, so that, I mean, literally, it's almost a cliche to say this, right? That we are better together than we are apart, right? But that is, I think that's the true work of the leader. I mean, what would you say, right, to a leader that would actually say, "Oh, great, okay, so now you've convinced me. Where do I start? Where do I start? I'm dying. I have too many things on the plate. I don't have this system in place. The culture is not there. My people aren't ready. Like, it's yet another 5 more things on my plate that is already, full to overfilling. Right? Where do I start?"
Well, there's one of my clients years ago. He called me in, and because I've been helping them develop parts of their management system. So we actually set up really good parts, and they had a lot of good information, a lot of good parts of the system, and the technology was great. And so we refined it, and we made it. It was all kind of sitting there. It was ready for people to engage in it, but people weren't engaging in it. And then this leader said to me, "Jen, can he's kind of saw the problem as productivity and their profitability. And he said, well, can you help us be productive and profitable?" And I said, well, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to write a number in the sky for you, but maybe we can work together and we can set up the conditions that will actually create that shift and engage people productively and effectively in the systems, because they're great people, they're great clients, that everything was great, but something was just missing, right? And so I went through a process of just having a series of conversations with their leaders and their project leaders. So kind of like I suppose we want to call it the leadership team in the organization. And something in those conversations, as I was having individual conversations with 18 people there, and something shifted in their thinking. And I thought about it for years afterwards, of what exactly, how do I define that thing that shifted? And they just all suddenly started seeing their leadership in a very different way. Now, a simple way to explain it. So if you look at an org chart, and I was explaining this in a comment recently to Tim Vaughan, as well. And so if you look at an org chart, and you've got like your top and your middle and your bottom, so as 3 layers within your org chart, and and some detail within that, it's very easy for people to sit at the top of that, where they kind of go, well, I'm leading at the front and my people are following behind me. I'm showing the way. So it's a very linear way of thinking about your leadership role. So I'm leading the way, I'm on front. But if you take that org chart and you imagine that you're viewing it from the top, and so I'm borrowing a tiny bit here from Simon Sinek. Richard, don't shoot me. But just that visual of actually, when you're looking at something like this, and it's a little bit of what Jeff Marler
I'm waiting for Richard to show you. Richard, come.
Yes, what do you see from the top? Now imagine if what you're seeing from the top is actually a flat disc with 3 concentric circles, and in the center you have your strategic thinking. I'm not saying your leaders, I'm saying your strategic thinking. And then the band around that then is where you have your operational thinking. And then around that then is you've got a deep band of people working, and your kind of your public facing or your product or service delivery people sit around that. Now, if leaders can see themselves for the most part standing at the center and looking out via operations and people working, to the external, the impact that the business has, they can see themselves as a core role looking out. And that's their job, is they've got to look via, like if they decide on strategy, that strategy must feed into operations and it must feed through people's work. If they understand their role as that makes a big difference already. That shifts something, and then that's a supportive role. And that's where, we talk about servant leadership. That is genuine servant leadership. It's not just being nice to your people. It's actually embedding decision-making in the middle and flowing it through in operations, which requires an understanding that the operational layer is hard. And as Richard often says, that people think strategy is easy and operations, strategy is hard and operations easy. It's the other way around. It's really hard to figure out the detail of how things sits in operations.
Yes.
Potentially, if you're trying to do it on your own, it's a lot easier when people come to the party and you know.
No, Richard's not going to shoot you. He said it sounds more like higher than Sinek.
Yeah.
No, Richard. Higher is not one concentric circle, right? It's like a bunch of grapes almost, attached to a center stem, right? And then there's this trunk. I mean, that's the whole analogy of higher, right? Those of you who are not familiar with higher, look up the organizational structure. It's called network organization. Is really interesting. I mean, look it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
The key there is that when leaders understand their role from the core out, there's also that understanding that can grow there is that hierarchy is not just about standing at the top. It's about taking responsibility and what you can see going upwards, and that allows people to start saying, well, hang on, who needs to be standing in this strategy decision making point with me, so we make a good decision, and then people get drawn into that. And so your safety manager, gets drawn into a meeting saying, what's really going on? What do you need from us? So we can make a good decision about safety for, as an example. So it's not separated anymore. So people can move more across those layers, and leaders move, this is now about their mindset. And they're able to move more. So what happened with this client of mine is that what shifted for them was that, everything was in place. They were kind of modern collaborative thinkers, but they weren't acting in that mindset. They had made an assumption based on the previous generation of directors that they'd taken the business over from and who they worked under for a long time. They'd made assumptions around how hierarchy works and what leadership looks like and what they should be spending their time on. And it stopped them from moving out from the core and actually saying, well, how do I impact conversations operationally? And suddenly things shifted when they suddenly gave themselves permission to stand in their own collaborative way of thinking. They started restructuring teams, they started changing conversations, and it was actually quite gentle shifts in the business. I mean, you wouldn't from day to day, pick up some major change in the business. The clients wouldn't have picked up anything other than, mistakes stopped showing up, so the good stuff happened. But internally, it was a gentle shift, but it was incredibly impactful, what they achieved with that, just from changing their thinking about how they saw their own role as leaders. So that's the first thing, as I would say, is people need to gain a new understanding of what it means to stand at the center of a system, and that it's not, it's not about elevating leaders. It's about supporting what happens around leaders. That's the first one.
Richard was talking about how the circles, the grapes have circles within circles, right? Yeah, I guess technically, each team has its own leadership and the small ideas. But I was just sharing a McKinsey interview with highest leaders, really about how the organizational structure is, and that's something you can go in and have a look. But really, this whole concept, right, of what is the first thing that needs to change, and I agree with you, Jennekin. I agree with you. We often say this. I've been a coach for many years. We often say this in coaching: the world changes when the world inside you changes. And that's the whole essence of coaching, right? The world outside changes when the world inside changes. So as a leader, the first thing that has to shift is the way you think about it, the way you think about yourself, your role as a leader, the way you think about the organization and how the organization is supposed to work, or your team, or your systems, all of that, right? The first thing that has to shift is it has to go from I am the superhero. Where was Richard's comment? I'm like, okay, let me find it out. It has to go from I am the superhero to I am the ecosystem enabler.
Yes.
Right? I have to step out of this. I am the leader. I am the superhero. Literally, you have to go from being Captain America to being one of the Avengers. That's what it is. Right? Yes.
Well, people often assume when you talk about flattened hierarchy, they assume that you're talking about something chaotic. I'm looking for a note that I made for myself earlier that explains it.
You're looking for slides?
It's going to be chaotic if we flatten hierarchy. But yes. It's only flattening a hierarchy isn't saying everyone can just decide whatever they want to decide, each for their own. That's not how it works. It's about structuring your giving attention to your infrastructure, that you have good flows along that the right, looking at if someone is in this spot and they have to make a decision, what sits over there in a database and information that's being collated there? Is it even accessible, like I said before, or is it presented in a way that people can actually make a good decision based on it? What feeds into it? So what is the interconnectivity here? What do we know about the people who are managing that? Do they even understand the point of what they're managing there, like what people need from it? So so it's that interconnectivity. Can I share a screen quickly?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say that I think one of the best analogy that I've had is from John Dobbins' work, right? I mean, John Dobbins' session, where he talked about it's like the body, right? I mean, we as the owners of a human body make a decision. I'm going to get out there and I'm going to walk to the kitchen, right? That is the decision, executive decision we have made. But the rest of the body gives us the feedback and enables us to do that, right? If on the way I stub my toe on something, I step on something, right? The body then reacts, and locally the body also reacts, right? So if I step on something, let's say I step on one of my son's Lego pieces, for example.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Lego foot, no.
Yes, I think most parents have had that experience. Your feet comes back right away, even before your brain registers that, oh, I have stepped on a Lego piece. Your foot reacts, and your body is designed for that foot to react, right? And then the body then makes a decision, okay, I shall not step there, I shall step in a different location. And just imagine the amount of adjustment in your balance to go from stepping down to pulling back to making another step. And that, I think, is something that is a very good analogy for where we hope this system to be, right? Which is not total chaos, but a system that can react, a system that can locally respond, but at the same time respond in a way that cooperate with the overall system. Because the whole aim is, I want to go to the kitchen.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I often see people do is that they kind of say, "All right, we need better connectivity in our system. We need this to be better." And so they look at the components of system. They might say, "All right, we need a really smart connective technology. So a really good platform where people can project manage, or with data is being collated and can be shared. So software solution." And then sometimes people go and they spend an enormous amount of money on this component, which is then meant to, it has all the bells and whistles, and they say, this can do that, and that. And what I tend to say is, well, that is like, it gives you the opportunity to do it, but it won't do it. So people need to do it. People need to be invested in that and use it. And so it's never just about creating those nodes of excellence in the system. It is far more about supporting flow in system. I'll share my screen quickly. I hope this works.
I'm going to show this, and I thought it was such an interesting comment because it tells the way that we're thinking about it, right? So Wayne says, go from Captain America to being the Swamp Thing, right? The Swamp Thing can inhabit, animate vegetable matter anywhere, including alien plants. It can even inhabit sentient one, can construct it into a body for itself. As a result, bodily attacks mean little, so it can easily regrow damaged or severe body parts. It can even transport itself across the globe by leaving its current form and transferring its consciousness to a new form grown from whatever vegetable matter is present in the location.
Be the Swamp Thing. Yes, I love it.
No, but I wanted to say this, right? I mean, I don't know whether from a people perspective, this is something that I really want to kind of encourage, right? Because I think if you look at it as not as the leader himself being the Swamp Thing. Richard says it sounds like a rhizome. No, rhizomes do not inhabit sentient plant matter, Richard. No. But anyway, I was going to say that if you think of it as an organization, the organization being a Swamp Thing, right? Do we want to look at, us being able to be infinitely mutable? Is there a core mission to our organization, a core strategy that we want to execute? Are there some parts of ourselves that that we want? I hate to think of people as we can just replace any part, which is has been thinking all this while, right? I can also
yeah.
kill you, right? And so on. And if you're damaged and you burn out, no, tough. I just hire somebody else off and take you on, right? So I'm thinking, is this really where we want to? Maybe it's the systems, I agree, but as an organization, is that where we really want to go?
Yeah, well, it's there's no need for I like the Swamp Thing analogy because it's about adaptation and use of what's available, and I think that is a really good analogy for that. I don't see it as when I read that, I wasn't thinking people are people can just be chucked off when they're not useful anymore. I don't agree with that. I think at the core, everything is about the value of people's experience. And what you create inside a business and what you impact on outside of a business. If we're not doing that, what the hell are we even doing on this planet? So this narrow focus on what I get out of it is not good enough. It's not fun. I mean, we might celebrate, when we do well and we get awards or, we get the next promotion, we might celebrate that moment. But the experience of achieving that, if it was horrible, I mean, what the hell, man? So I recently spoke to someone who got an amazing promotion, and I'd heard about it. And then when I saw this person, I said, "This is incredible! Well done! You must be so happy." And he literally, his shoulders just slumped. He goes, "Yeah, it's not fun, but it's important." And he wasn't going to say no to it. And he works extremely hard, and he'll do really well in it. But it's not fun, and he's not enjoying life. so there is a place where we can work hard and give and actually be regenerative. Be regenerated as we work. It doesn't have to be this idea of depleting ourselves all the time. I come to life when I do my favorite kind of work, and then my brain is mush afterwards because I've worked so hard. But
I think
worth it, right?
Jennekin is beyond that, right? It's like what Daniel has said, right? Which is, it's us being part of the collective intelligence, right? A leader has to go beyond himself, right? What are the personality, skills, technology they need? How do I get this team to work with us? And I'll be very blunt and say this, right? I think most of us enjoy the Avengers movies. I mean, at least box office wise, they do so much better than other things. Obviously, more star power is a draw, but we do enjoy seeing a team that draws together and pulls together.
Yeah.
I think this is why, as humans, I think we are socially wired to actually enjoy succeeding with the team as opposed to succeeding by ourselves by stepping on the team, right? And then that exactly that leader that you said, oh, okay, I don't enjoy it, right? I don't enjoy it because I feel like I'm pulling the entire team along with me. They are such a drudgery. But if I can have a team that I don't pull with me, but rather support me, and we are all going forward together. I know this is like a better analogy, but the Marines, the SEALs have been studied for team performance, and I think that's one of the concepts that have come up from there, which is that everybody pulls together for one common goal, and it's not the leader who has shouldered the entire mission, but everybody. And even if the leader is down, the rest of them will go forward and accomplish what needs to be accomplished. I think that's what we are looking at.
That's right. Yeah, definitely.
You wanted to share something, right? Yes, before I interrupted
you. Sorry, I did want to share something. I'll put it up quickly. Let me know if it's all working. So this is
okay.
That's right.
Yeah, sure. Yes, yeah, I see. There you go.
Okay, so I mean, it's the idea of I do a workshop on this where I help groups of people, and I always recommend it as all the roles in the business. So you don't just say this is a leadership conversation. This is across the roles of a business to actually draw people into a conversation, for them to stand back and see the system around them and the place that they have in it. I like how Joan Lurie describes this as getting the balcony view. So you go up to the balcony and you look down on the courtyard, where you are also in the courtyard with everyone else around you, and you kind of have this view of how does the whole thing work and what's my place in it. And this is what I was saying before: is that you need flow and interconnectivity in a system. I think my other image, is that one showing? It's this idea that different parts of a system needs to be connected. And I was saying before that a good starting point is not just how do we, number one, the information environment. So something like a software platform. It's not just about putting that thing in place. It's about understanding what connects with it. And so that you get those internal connections and system across to enabled leadership. How do you have information in the system that actually flows to where it's needed so people can make a decision based on that information? So what actually sets up that connection? How does it show up? And to actually give that attention, that flow between parts, even if the parts themselves are still underdeveloped, that flow that happens in a system will actually help people develop the parts to be well suited to the business and them and the work that they do. So, flow and system, to me, that's everything about, creating resilience in a system, is flow and system, and understanding that there's many parts to it, and that people literally, if you look, and this is why it's so important not to create silos. So if a person is involved in, say, a process, that systemically, that flow in and around that process can actually cover all parts of systemic flow. It might show all the parts.
And ask, right? What is this flow we are talking about? Is it a flow of work, a flow of information, a flow of processes, a flow of people? What really is this flow that you're talking about?
Yeah. So you got to think of it in terms of the everyday. It's not something that you can define and say, this is what flow is like, and you tell people to do it and then it happens. It's in the everyday. It's understanding, information and decision making across a system in a business, and how do you design individual parts to encourage and enable flow. So, for instance, if you, one example would be, say you're in a meeting and people are, putting information on the table and they're accountable for what they're showing. So it's a visibility and an accountability moment. And they're putting something on the table and they're saying, oh, this is going wrong. We have a problem here. Is that conversation simply, narrow focused on, well, you screwed up and you should do better next time? Or is someone saying, we actually need to figure out why this keeps happening. We actually need to resolve this. And if, say, a leader is in that conversation, and they're not just going, so-and-so go sort it out and bring me a solution. If they're actually saying, this is really important, can you figure it out and come talk to me next week? We're going to have a meeting, and actually show their interest in it. So that's a mechanism of flow in the system. And then where does that idea go? Do you even give attention to how the steps of innovation in your business, even for small businesses? Who looks at it? Where is it talked about? How is it visible? Where does that bit of information go? How do leaders treat it? So that's flow. That's when something happens and it actually has a knock-on effect in a positive way. But you can design that.
Right? A lot of this that you were saying, right? Leaders tell me about this all the time, right? I mean, which is don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution. And my answer almost to that is, okay, so my job is a consultant. I have to bring you a solution, right? But if your job is as a staff, I would argue that a staff should deal with the issues that they can already deal with, not bring it to a leader. But the time when you bring it to the leader is probably because this is beyond my capacity or beyond my scope, right? I have no idea what to do. And I need, maybe not so much the leader, but I need the team to get together and look at this issue and decide what we're going to do. Right. Yeah. So this whole don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution thing is it works for simple problems which I can solve by myself. I just report to you, hey, I had this problem, I solved it already. This is what we did, just to keep you informed, right? But the real problems, right? The problems that are the hairy, naughty ones, the emergent ones from COVID, they're not like that, right? They literally, like what you said, I need to flow information from different parts of the organization. I need to think about where my strategy is going after this. And I need all of these parts to get connected.
Yeah. Well, there's constantly, there's variables in system and people.
I don't see. Okay, so I got cut off for a bit, but that, yes, go on.
No, I was going to say that there's always variables.
Do you hear me? I mean, am I cut off again?
You're a little bit lagged, but I can hear you.
Yes, no. Yeah, okay. So what happens is we've covered 2 steps. I mean, we are past the hour, but we've covered 2 steps. The first is change your mindset, right? Change the way that you think about the whole problem, right? I mean, think of it as we need to build a system to catch these balls, not just for me, but for any of my people who drop the ball. The second step is look at the flow, right? Look at how work information is flowing at the moment, and look at the in-between spaces, right? Like what is happening in between people? What is the whole thing doing? Right? That would, I think, be the second step. And the
Design
third
it
one,
is what I'm saying. You've got to
design it,
design
yes. No, but the
it.
third one I was gonna say is before you design it, after you have like more or less, you won't completely understand it, but you've understood it to a certain extent. I feel you should sit down with your people and go, hey guys, this is what we have uncovered. These are the things that we are doing, let them contribute to that information building and go like, how do we want to design the system so that the system can catch, so that we can all catch each other's drop balls, so that the system can alert us when any balls are dropped, and then we can then be in a position to drop it. And if that happens, which inevitably it will happen, who's going to catch what balls, right? So and Daniel says we struggle to overcome challenges if we use the same thinking. Einstein mentioned something like that. Yes, I'm not sure if Einstein mentioned that, but I agree. I totally agree. You can never, solve the problem in the same thinking you created it in. And the thing is, I personally believe, I don't believe in this. Leaders should go away, understand the system, and design it, and then implement it on people. I really don't believe in that, because you are going to have such a huge acceptance and buy-in problem, right? Like understand it to a certain extent, put it on the table, and go like, you guys add your understanding to it, so there will be new understandings added to it. That's the first step. Make sense of what's happening.
Healthy systems evolve, right? They evolve based on need and the reality and the variables that show up. So if there's an expectation that you can't design the perfect system, there's an expectation that it's going to take everyone's effort to keep making this a healthy body. I mean, when I've seen this happen, I mean, I've got one client who, when she started her business, she just has the ecosystem mindset. She just approaches things without ego. And so for her, it's about how she can best support her people and how she can set up very deliberate functional systems. And right from the beginning, that's what she did. And as her business grew and she started being able to, and she, people were very loyal to her. That she just does not have a staff turnover generally, because people just love being there. And as she delegates responsibility, people genuinely feel they're part of something where they are heard and they, their ideas matter. She still takes responsibility. If she can see further and she can say, look, I don't think this is going to work, or this creates too much risk in this business, people trust that, So it just enabled her to create this incredibly highly functional, systemically strong environment where she can delegate, because she knows people have her back and they know she's still got their back. They know that she values it because she's willing to put her time into, all those system elements and give it attention. But she can't handle all of it. And so people, based on their interests, which she also is highly aware of, they were able to take over parts of it and help evolve it. But there's never, I go there only once a year and we have a really good chat there. But there's never, nothing is ever static. There's always slight evolution in the process.
Right.
And this is probably where leaders need to, kind of do a little bit of a sound check with themselves. That it's not about just telling people how to do it. This is about trusting your own people. I mean, you hired people who work in business. You got to trust your people.
I want to highlight that, because you said that know that your people have your backs and know that you have their backs, right? I think that is worth remembering. And I think Daniel said something really similar, which is the leader collaborates with the people to co-build and evolve the system. And I think you got it in one, Daniel. That's what it means, right? I mean, I don't think that, as you said, the leader could have a bigger, higher view, a more systemic view, but it doesn't mean the leader has the only view, right? Because it's like the elephant, right? Who has the right view of the elephant? A systemic view doesn't show you many of the realities that is happening in the operational issues. So this is what I mean by really, right? I mean, it's a 3-step process. Change your own thinking, find out what's happening, where's the flow, and then sit down with your people to go like, okay, guys, what is something that we can start? Like what Jennekin said. I mean, don't look at, we gotta develop the what is that Avengers system?
Don't design the whole thing when you start.
Yeah. Like don't design the Death Star, right? Literally design the next one little step and then evolve it slowly and slowly and slowly. And like every time it is a work in progress. It's never gonna like finish. But we are slowly evolving the system. And as new situations emerge, to be closer to what we want, to support all of us, so that I think this is brilliant. I mean, to know that you're so that we can have each other's back. You have the back of your people has the backs of you. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it. So, what is one thing that you want to say, right, in closing, Jennekin, right? Like, if you don't remember anything from this, episode, just remember this one. What would you want to say?
Just leaving people with a visual of how I think all of this works. We talk about ecosystems and interconnectivity, but I think of my term that I like using is a habitat. So you got to think of a business almost like an enclosure, a habitat, and there are there's a certain purpose to it. There's certain inhabitants in it, and there's certain things that must happen within it. And so your systems within your habitat need to support that. And they need to enable it, and they need to be kept healthy. Habitat is something that you maintain, and it's built for purpose, and you maintain, the systems that support people to do and to exist healthily and productively in that space. So, think of that as your business as an enclosure in that sense. That does also help to to kind of put a boundary around, how far do you take this, connection and variables and all that, and what we do in this, and how do we listen to our people, and how do we use their skills and their abilities and all that. It does put a boundary around it, because that habitat has a purpose. It's trying to deliver something beyond itself. It's creating something that goes outside of it, right? And so in its products or its services. So whatever the systems are within that, it's trying to support that result, as well as, keeping it healthy inside. And that enables us to then, when you, let's say you sit in I don't like calling them performance reviews, I like calling them engagement reviews, where you're sitting in a conversation with an employee as a leader, and you're saying, well, how are you going? That conversation, what you're looking for is that hopefully a sizable overlap between the person's interests and skills and what that habitat needs from them. So you're looking for that overlap. So, if you thinking about your strategy in the business, the vision you have for the business, changes that you want to bring, the goals you want to achieve with the business, and you're talking to a person, you're trying to see what's their overlap with what this entity is trying to achieve. If there is no overlap, that person's going to be unhappy, you're going to be unhappy with them, nothing works out well there, right? So it's really important for both parties to look for that overlap and to actually say, well, what do we develop in that space? So that's what I mean by when I say, there's a boundary around this that keeps it really sensible. And it creates a lot of space to then consider the health and well-being of your people as well, doesn't it? Because you want the whole space to function well. It's not just about this linear being in a race and achieving goals and getting rewarded on it. It's a larger interconnected space where the people in it serve a valuable function, whoever they might be.
I think that's brilliant, literally. I think knowing what's the habitat, helping your people to align themselves with the habitat, and helping that whole habitat to function better. I think HR, doing this for 10 years, I totally agree with you. This is why I talked to you earlier about what are each person best at and how can they best serve the aims and objectives of the organization. And if there isn't, it's totally fine. There's a whole different episode about how to hold a good conversation with an employee that you know is a bad fit and would thrive better elsewhere. Right?
Yeah.
How do you talk to them? Literally, how do you fire an employee so that you remain best friends? But that aside, yes, no, I get it. But that's aside. I think, in conclusion, these are the three things. If you are listening to this and you want to get started, these are the three things. Number one, change your mindset. Number two, understand the flow of the system. And number three, co-design the system with your people. Understand it is a constant evolution. Understand that it will forever be a work in progress, and you're just slowly shifting your way there.
Yeah. But it's valuable work that feels good.
Yes, valuable work that feels good. Supports the purpose of the habitat. Yes.
It's results,
Yes,
so, and it's incremental then. Once you've got a healthy ecosystem, it's incremental, the changes you make, and they're welcomed and they feel good, and change becomes easy inside that, because people get get why it matters, so it works. And I would just say that change your mindset very specifically is about see leadership as standing at the core, and your decision making affects everything that happens around you, all the way out to service and product delivery.
Okay. And I think we have one last comment from Daniel that is an ongoing journey. Yes, Daniel, and I hope that this short discussion helps you to take at least the first step. Thank you very much, Daniel. Also, Wayne, as well as Richard, all of you who have participated, everyone who has been listening in to us. Thank you, Jennekin. This has been very insightful. I think this is something that a lot of leaders need at this point because a lot of them are burning out and a lot of us are struggling. So thank you very much, Jennekin. Thanks for all your sharing today.
And you're so welcome. It's been fun.
Yes, next week I'm going to talk about coaching. So if any of you are listening to this and you do not believe in coaching, let me know, because next week I have 2 coaches coming by and we're going to look at, really, is coaching always made out to be, right? Coaching has boomed since COVID, but is it really what it's made out to be? Is it yet another hype, yet another, trendy thing that is going to come and go? Does it really help the business? So that's what we're going to look at next week. Okay, so see us. Goodbye. Thanks, Jennekin, and thanks to all of you who are listening. See you next week.